First of all, our leaders were unreliable. Remember, we had poached them from the counseling office, right? They were not the most emotionally stable students on campus. Actually, they were the least emotionally stable students on campus, right? We were really excited when they just showed up.
Hey everybody, it's Stephanie here with Informed Parents of California, and today I am going to be discussing GSA clubs. Those are school clubs usually held during lunchtime, and I'm going to discuss why it is breeding grounds for predators and how they are recruiting and training our children in these clubs without parents ever knowing about it. So this first document that I'm showing you right here is from Cornell Law School website. It's the Legal Information Institute, and this is regarding some laws regarding having a school club on campus. And so all school clubs are supposed to be student initiated and student led. And if you look on the highlighted area that I have here, C1, it says meeting is voluntary and student initiated. And then line 2, it says there is no sponsorship of the meeting by the school, the government, or its agents or employees. Now I'm going to go over the definitions that they have for sponsorship. On line 2, it says the term sponsorship includes the act of promoting, leading, or participating in a meeting. The assignment of a teacher, administrator, or other school employee to a meeting for the custodial purposes does not constitute sponsorship of the meeting. So right here we have it very clear. The meeting, which is the student club, is supposed to be student initiated and student led, and teachers, school, government, or other agents are not supposed to sponsor it, and they're not supposed to initiate it. They're not supposed to lead it. It's done by the students.
I'm a 7th grade English teacher at Rosemont Middle School in La Crescenta, California, which is part of the Glendale Unified School District. Thank you all for being here. I'm here because with a group of brave students, I helped start my school's GSA in 2015. And I want to help you possibly do the same thing. So here's my lesson plan for this workshop. We're going to spend the first 30-ish minutes, and I'm going to tell you about my experience. How it was that we came to have a GSA, what difference it made, the pitfalls, the successes, the good, the bad, and the ugly. The reason I'm telling you my story is because I don't think my story is unique. I think my story could also be your story, and I'm hoping that by listening to the experiences that I had, that you'll be able to pull something from that will be useful to you. Also, I learn better from examples, so I tend to present lots of examples. So that's sort of the motivation there. So after I tell you my story, we're going to change gears, and then it's going to become more of a workshop model where I will sort of give you some questions for you to start with about creating your own GSA. But then you will have time to talk to the people around you, start to write down your ideas. Maybe you're here with a partner from your school and you can start to sort of plan some things out. We'll do some sharing out. And then at the end, I'm going to, so it's the now I have a GSA, so now what kind of portion? What are you going to do at your weekly meetings and things like that? So that's my sort of big picture plan for our time together. So I hope that meets with what you're hoping to get out of this session. All right, so your GSA plan. So I'm going to highlight a couple of questions that are in that handout that I think are really important to think about as you get started. First of all, why do you want to start a GSA? There is no legal requirement that you have an answer to this question, but you're going to be asked it 57 times, so you might as well have an answer. Okay? GSAs are student-led clubs, so who are your students? How are you going to find them? First of all, our leaders were unreliable. Remember, we had poached them from the counseling office, right? They were not the most emotionally stable students on campus. Actually, they were the least emotionally stable students on campus, right? We were really excited when they just showed up. My husband, Alex, who at the time of this in 2015 was the mental health counselor at our school, which meant that Alex and I were doing all the planning for this GSA. We had never hosted a club like this before. We didn't know what to do. We didn't know what to expect. And so we struggled to come up with weekly activities for our club.
Okay, we are just going to have to stop right there for a minute. This teacher is training other teachers how to start a student-initiated, student-led GSA club. And she talks about how are you going to find your students and how she poached them out of the counseling office. Okay? Poached them. So let's go back to the definition of poached, which many of you probably know, but like I always say, it's good to have a refresher. So poach definition: to take and use for yourself unfairly or dishonestly something, usually an idea, that belongs to someone else. She goes on to say that these students are not the most emotionally stable students. Actually, they are the least emotionally stable students on campus. Not only that, but her husband is the mental health counselor at that school. They are using their position of influence and authority to manipulate the most vulnerable children. As a parent, I would be livid if my child was manipulated by these people who hold authority over them in their school.
So to keep our club going, we now recruit our leaders in the spring. So I don't wait until school starts in the fall. I start looking at my club members in the spring and trying to handpick who I want my leaders to be, right? So I start recruiting my leaders in the spring. I start inviting them to the leadership meetings and tell them this is a student-led club, which means you get to make it what you want it to be. And we had the support of most of our staff members, but certainly we had others that were not so happy. When Alex did a presentation to the staff about transgender students, we had a few staff members walk out. We had a teacher who was vocally critical of our club decide that he was going to come to the club one week and watch. And at which point we informed him, well, everyone is welcome here. You don't get to watch. They aren't monkeys in the zoo. If you're here, you are expected to participate. And then we turn to our students and say, hey, everybody, we have a special guest here. Make sure you include him in your conversations. He left and he didn't come back, right? But we had to sort of perform that role of bouncer to protect the kids.
This is what you would call a social justice teacher, and they are in vast majority and growing in numbers rapidly. Could there be one in your child's school? You have to ask yourself, do you believe your child is safe in the public school? As someone who has done extensive research for the past several years and has been advocating for parents and children, I do not believe that any children are safe in the public education system. Did you hear those teachers laughing when she told them about getting the most unstable student? These clubs are in schools across the nation. I have heard so many stories of kids being recruited in schools, and if you even heard about what they're doing in these clubs, you would be shocked. It's time to get our kids out now. Do whatever you can and make whatever sacrifice you're able to make to homeschool your children or put them in a good private school. And whatever you do, don't send them back.
First of all, our leaders were unreliable. Remember, we had poached them from the counseling office, right? They were not the most emotionally stable students on campus. Actually, they were the least emotionally stable students on campus, right? We were really excited when they just showed up. You will find you need to counsel students. Like in my example with a girl who sat in my classroom crying, right? That was not an isolated incident. I have a fundamentally different relationship to my students now that I run a GSA than I did 5 years ago, right? Some of them call me mom, right? That's just how it is now.